Title: The Last Direct Deposit. Frank Delaney had been waking up at exactly 5:42 a.m. every morning since 1971. A routine forged in the assembly lines of Akron. Now softened by a quiet life in Tucson where the sun rose early and the coffee was always too hot, like the weather here. That morning was no different, except for the one notification on his cracked iPhone 8. Deposit from SSA, $1,500,000. Frank blinked. Cleaned his bifocals with a faded, Ford Tough t-shirt and blinked again. Damn. I must have died or something. He said that out loud, but there was no one there to hear it except his cat. But the smell of stale Folgers coffee brewing said otherwise. He checked again. It wasn't $1,500. It was $1.5 million. Right there, in his checking account, sitting there like it belonged to him. Most 78-year-olds might call the Social Security office. Frank, however, was not most 78-year-olds. Frank had grown up during a time when you didn't trust the government, but you respected the con. He'd paid into Social Security for 52 years. Never missed a payment, because it was automatically deducted from every single paycheck he had ever received. He never cheated on taxes, he never even took a free refill at the restaurant without asking. But if someone or something had accidentally hit the wrong amount of zeros? Hell, he muttered out loud, sipping his stale coffee covered up with cream and sugar. Seems like back pay if you ask me. Then logging into his bank account from a borrowed laptop computer just to make sure it wasn't just a prank. Yes, the money was there. He thought to himself silently about how this could be life-changing or even life-threatening. He had to create a plan. Phase 1, Vanishing the Money. Frank wasn't tech-savvy, but he knew enough to play dumb with a purpose. He walked into the local library, logged onto a public computer and began searching for options. He found out very quickly that cryptocurrencies were highly unregulated and untraceable, the loophole he had been looking for. It took 2 weeks, 6 burner phones and the purchase of a crypto wallet from a kid named Zeke he met at a diner after some shady communication on Facebook and then bounced over to Twitter to confirm the clandestine meeting. Using a series of slow, carefully timed wire transfers, through foreign intermediary banks, he pushed most of the funds through obscure financial rabbit holes that even the IRS would need a roadmap to track, using his crypto wallet. He left just enough in his regular bank account to not raise any immediate suspicion. Let them think I'm buying a Winnebago, he said to his house cat, whom he had named Payday. Phase 2, The Exit. Frank started making appointments for the dentist, his cardiologist and the DMV to update his driver license and registration of his car, which he had planned to give away. He even went to vote early, just in case things didn't look right to those that knew him. He didn't want to arouse any suspicion from the people around him, just act normal, he would repeat to himself during any contact with persons he knew. Then, he faked a fall at a grocery store while shopping for vegetables. He bruised his elbow pretty severely, not really part of the plan but good cover. He was taken to the emergency room and they decided to put his arm in a sling, nothing was broken. The incident report filed by the paramedics listed it as mild confusion leading to a fall. Perfect, now he would have time to continue with implementing the plan he had concocted. 2 weeks went by with everything remaining normal. After his elbow had mostly healed, decidedly he booked a one-way cruise to Lisbon under the name Charles Denver. Not a fake ID, just the passport of a dead neighbor he'd helped mow the lawn for many years. Frank had been told by the neighbors that he and Charles could be brothers as they looked so much alike, a fact that now definitely worked in his favor. After all, he had paid for the cremation and final expenses for Charles, it seemed only fair in Frank's judgment. Charles had no family left, they had all perished in a horrible plane crash, years earlier. Frank left behind a full fridge of food, all his bills paid in advance, gave his car to charity and sent his cat to a trusted friend who had moved to England. Also a neatly folded American flag from his late wife's memorial shelf was left, she was an army nurse who was killed in action during the Afghan war, treating wounded soldiers. Also a note, simple but effective, that read, Gone fishing. Don't wait up. Frank. Short and sweet, he thought to himself as he taped the note to the mantel over the fireplace. That night he packed a small suitcase and took an Uber to the docks where the cruise ship was. He got permission for early boarding from the cruise line. He settled into his cabin, opened his suitcase, grabbed the bottle of Scotch whiskey he had smuggled on board and took a healthy gulp straight from the bottle. Have I done it? He thought to himself as he reached for another swig from the bottle. Falling asleep with the bottle still half full in his hands. Awaking many hours after he had departed the United States. He looked out the porthole and saw nothing but water. A sense of completeness was overwhelming as he drifted back to sleep. Now, somewhere in Europe. Frank is now 80 years old, sipping espresso, no more stale Folgers, from a sun-soaked balcony in the Azores. No one asks him questions here, except how he enjoys the weather. He tips very well, speaks poor Portuguese, and wears a Panama hat that makes him look like Hemingway, if Hemingway shopped at Costco, that is. Sometimes he watches the news, but stays mainly to his daily routine, playing with his cat, Payday, taking long walks along the beach and having dinner and drinks with his new neighbors, while struggling with his elementary command of the Portuguese language. There was a brief blip last year, buried in the local newspaper, about what the Social Security Administration labeled as a clerical error that was unrecoverable. No other details were listed, however. He chuckles to himself about that on a daily basis now. 50 years of labor. One final paycheck. The government forgot about Frank Delaney. But Frank? He didn't forget a damn thing. It's been years since Frank Delaney vanished without a trace, a 78-year-old former auto worker from Akron. He had outwitted the federal government, vanished with $1.5 million, and left behind nothing but a clean apartment, and a half-finished crossword puzzle on his kitchen table next to a cold, stale, cup of Folgers coffee. His story had become a whispered urban legend in the government's most secure offices, a red file, that no one dared speak of out loud, for fears of repercussions. But for one man, it wasn't just a story, it was a mission to solve the case. The Tracker. Zachary Miles is 33, a cybersecurity analyst with the Social Security Administration, in Baltimore. He is obsessive, very quiet, and a bit too caffeinated. The kind of guy who notices patterns that no one else does. He first caught the anomaly in a forum on social media for expatriates in Portugal. A user named Old Iron casually mentioned funding a mobile dental clinic for seniors along the Algarve. No GoFundMe, no donations, no photos. Just, they needed teeth. I had the means. Zachary had read everything about the Delaney case. He knew Frank's former habits, favorite diner orders, even his brand of orthopedic shoes. Old Iron talked like him, even used the phrase, "Life's short, so make it wide." Zach had finally found a thread. He shook at the thought that one man had outsmarted the United States government. Meanwhile, in a quiet coastal village in Greece, an elderly woman named Rita gets a phone call. No caller ID. Just a voice. You'll get a knock tomorrow. Let them check your teeth. New sets on me. She smiles through her dentures, which have long since cracked and failed, and tells no one. All across the world, Ecuador, Thailand, Sicily, older Americans who had once slipped through the cracks of the system are being mysteriously lifted up. Rent paid, healthcare covered, and private notes written in that same shaky but defiant script, you paid in. Now it's time you got paid back. No one knows who's behind it. But some whisper his nickname, the Golden Ghost. A game of chess. Zachary isn't the only one following the clues. A private contractor named Emery Voss, ex-CIA investigator, has been hired under the table by someone with ties to the United States Treasury. She doesn't want to bring the Golden Ghost in, she wants to recruit him for the Treasury Department, and for her own use. They want to flip the Golden Ghost into a tool. Imagine what he could do with a little direction, she says to her contact at the government. A myth that works solely for us. But Frank? He's always 2 moves ahead of them. Frank decides to stir the pot a bit, and sends Zachary a postcard. No return address, typed not written, just a photo of a quiet marina and the words, "You won't find any peace by chasing golden ghosts. But if you ever decide to retire early, find me. I've got some work for you." The back of the card has just a drawing of a pawn becoming a king, like the chess move. A legacy. Zachary doesn't report the postcard out of fear of reprisals. How does this guy know where I am, he continually asks himself. Am I being watched? This spooked Zach, so instead, he quietly quits his job at the Social Security Administration. Quickly sells his condo at a loss. He then tells his friends and family he's going to take some time off to figure things out. He then books a one-way flight to Uruguay under an assumed name he found in the SSA archives. He had found Zeke during his investigation, and Zeke was glad to create a fake passport for him, for about $1,000, paid in cryptocurrency of course. As for the ex-CIA agent Emery Voss, well, the trail went cold. Zach had left nothing for her. Not that she didn't try, but after several trips to Europe she had exhausted her bank account and gave up. Her contact in the government had left nothing for her as well, not even reimbursement for all the travel to Europe. In a quiet cafe in Montevideo, a barista hands Frank an unmarked package with his coffee. Inside, a folder full of names and addresses. All elderly, all hurting financially, and all overlooked by the United States government. A note clipped to the front of the folder. Time to widen some lives, Golden Ghost. And just like that, the network and the legend grows. Epilogue. The Golden Ghost was never caught and never even really chased. Not because the government gave up, but because, somewhere along the way, someone realized, he was doing their job better than they ever did. And in nursing homes, senior centers, and back alley clinics, the legend only grew stronger and stronger. Not all heroes wear capes and are bulletproof. Some wear Velcro sneakers and remember what it felt like to be forgotten and abandoned. Frank is still alive and well, continuing his clandestine work, helping others wherever and whenever he can. Will he ever get caught? Only time will tell.